The colony on the edge of Human Alliance space was quiet but alive. Its streets shimmered under soft artificial lights. Gardens bloomed in carefully maintained parks, and the air smelled faintly of flowers and fresh water. For Irina, stepping onto solid ground without chains felt like stepping into a dream she had almost forgotten existed. Commander Elias Ward walked beside her, his hand occasionally brushing hers in quiet reassurance. Though he had risked much to bring her here, he moved with calm, careful patience, letting her set the pace. She had been through darkness for so long that every moment of light felt fragile. "I never thought I would feel safe again," she whispered softly. "You're safe now," he said. "You can start living." Irina glanced around. She noticed children playing in the streets, humans and aliens sharing stories and laughter. She saw merchants offering food and clothing, artisans shaping colorful materials into objects of beauty, and the gentle hum of community life. The world was alive, full of possibility, and she was part of it. At first, the adjustment was not easy. Every shadow reminded her of chains. Every metallic sound echoed memories of the prison. She flinched at sudden noises and hesitated to speak with strangers. But Elias never forced her. He simply stayed by her side, encouraging her gently. "You don't have to do everything at once," he said one afternoon, watching her explore the colony gardens. "Take small steps. Every day is a new beginning." Irina nodded. She held the pendant he had given her tightly, a small star-shaped symbol of the Human Alliance. It reminded her that someone had seen her, not as a number, not as property, but as a living being. Someone had believed in her when the universe had forgotten. Slowly, she began to trust others. She smiled at children who reminded her of Valari youth, listened to merchants who shared tales from across the stars, and helped tend to small gardens that reminded her of her home moon, Lithora. Every small act of interaction became a step toward healing. One morning, Elias brought her to the colony's learning center. "I thought you might like to see this," he said softly. Inside, holographic screens displayed maps of galaxies, teaching modules on diplomacy, science, and art, and historical records of countless civilizations. Irina's eyes widened. She had learned about her world only from memory and whispers, but here, knowledge stretched across stars. "Can I learn too?" she asked. "Of course," Elias replied. "Knowledge belongs to everyone." She spent hours reading, drawing, and asking questions. For the first time in years, she felt her mind open. The darkness that had clouded her thoughts for so long began to lift. Knowledge was freedom, she realized. Freedom to understand, freedom to dream, and freedom to grow. Weeks passed, and Irina became more confident. She started speaking with other Valari refugees who had settled in the colony. She shared her experiences, her memories, and slowly her voice grew strong. Though she still bore the scars of her past, she had begun to reclaim her identity. Elias watched her quietly. Each smile, each moment of courage filled him with satisfaction. He had not just saved her from chains, he had given her a chance to rediscover herself. One evening, as the colony celebrated a festival of lights, Irina stood beside Elias, watching glowing lanterns float into the sky. The colors reflected in her eyes, making them shimmer like the rivers of Lithora she had once known. "Do you ever regret helping me?" she asked softly. He smiled. "Never. You remind me why mercy matters. Sometimes saving one life can change everything, not just for that person, but for everyone they touch." Irina looked at him thoughtfully. "Then, maybe I can help others too." And so she began to act. She helped Valari who had been lost or forgotten, guiding them through the colony, teaching them small skills to survive and thrive. She shared stories from their home, reminding them that beauty and hope still existed beyond the pain. The humans she encountered were amazed at her resilience. She had endured years of suffering, and yet she chose kindness over bitterness. Every word she spoke, every gesture she made inspired those around her. Her story began to spread, not as a tale of despair, but as a tale of hope. People spoke of the Valari who had survived the prison of Vorthon Prime, and the human who had shown mercy. The story reminded everyone that compassion could overcome cruelty, and that one life's courage could ripple across worlds. Elias often visited her, but he treated her as an equal, never as a project or a mission. They walked together in gardens, shared meals, and sometimes simply sat quietly watching the stars. One day Irina asked, "Why did you save me?" even when others didn't care. He looked at her, thinking carefully, because I couldn't ignore what was right. I've learned that sometimes the smallest act of kindness can have the biggest impact. You weren't just a prisoner. You were a soul, and that mattered more than anything. She held his gaze, understanding the depth of his words. Then, maybe kindness is stronger than chains. Yes, he replied softly. Stronger than chains, stronger than fear, stronger than silence. Months later, Irina had grown into her new life. She had learned to laugh, to dream, and to hope without fear. She had made friends, taught others, and even led a small community of Villari in the colony. Though memories of her captivity remained, they no longer defined her. She had reclaimed her identity, her voice, and her purpose. The human who had saved her, Commander Elias Ward, remained her friend, guide, and companion, yet he never overshadowed her. He understood that true help meant empowering others to stand on their own, and stand she did. One day, reporters from the Human Alliance arrived to interview Irina. They had heard of her escape and her resilience. Cameras and microphones were placed around her, but she stood tall, confident and unafraid. Irina, a reporter asked, how did you survive, and what inspired you to move forward? She paused, then looked directly at the camera. I survived because someone believed I deserved to be seen, and I moved forward because I realized hope is stronger than despair. One act of mercy can light up a whole world if we let it. Her words were simple, yet they resonated with everyone listening. Across colonies, humans and aliens alike felt the power of compassion and courage. When asked about Elias, she smiled faintly. He didn't just save me. He reminded me that even in the darkest place, someone can still choose mercy. That choice changed my life, and it was true. That single act of compassion had rippled through her life, transforming her from a frightened prisoner into a beacon of hope for countless others. Years later, Irina continued to thrive. She became a teacher, a mentor, and a storyteller. She shared her experiences with young Villari and humans alike, always emphasizing the importance of seeing each other as living beings with hearts and souls. Elias watched her from a distance, proud of how far she had come. The galaxy had many battles, many wars, and many injustices, but he knew that some victories weren't fought with weapons. They were won in hearts and minds through mercy, compassion, and the courage to act. Irina often returned to the garden where she had first felt hope again. She would sit among the flowers, looking at the sky, and remember the cold tunnels of Vorthan Prime. But she no longer felt fear. Instead, she felt gratitude for life, for freedom, and for the human who had shown her that even in a universe full of darkness, light could shine. And sometimes when she looked at the stars, she whispered softly, "Thank you for seeing me." Across the galaxy, a story had begun to spread. Not of war, not of conquest, but of mercy, courage, and humanity. It reminded everyone that the smallest act of kindness could change a life, a world, and even the stars themselves. The legend of Irina and the human who saved her became an example of HFY, humans at their best, showing that compassion, courage, and empathy could triumph over cruelty, fear, and despair. And in a quiet corner of the universe, two friends stood beneath artificial stars, knowing that no chain, no prison, and no darkness could ever hold a soul determined to live freely. They had discovered the truth. Freedom is not just leaving the cage behind. It is being seen, being believed in, and being allowed to shine. The sun of the planet Varlion 9 never shone with warmth. It was a pale, cold star that hung in a dull gray sky, giving little light to the barren mines below. The air smelled of metal dust and oil, and the sound of machinery echoed through endless tunnels. In one of those dark places worked a young alien girl named Lyra. Her thin arms trembled as she carried a heavy container filled with glowing minerals. Her gray-blue skin was covered in dirt, and her wrists were bound by metal cuffs that hummed with energy. A faint chain connected her to the others, like a group of animals forced to move together. The guards, tall, scaled beings called Zerath, watched them from the platforms above. The Zerath were powerful and proud, their red armor shining under the dim lights. They looked down on Lyra's kind, the Varn, as weak and simple creatures meant only for labor. Lyra had never known a different life. She was born in the mines. Her mother had died there too. Every day was the same. Wake up to the sound of the electric siren, eat a small piece of dry bread, and work until the lights went dark again. No one spoke much. Words could bring punishment. When a Varn moved too slowly, a guard pressed a button on his control stick, sending a shock through the metal cuffs. Lyra had learned to stay quiet and move fast. Still, her body carried old scars, reminders of days when she wasn't fast enough. That morning, something unusual happened. A new group arrived at the mining site, a team of humans. They came from a faraway planet called Earth, known for its growing power among the stars. The Zirath had invited them to fix the energy systems of the mines as the machines were breaking down. The humans looked different, soft skin, round faces, and calm eyes. They didn't roar or hiss like the Zirath. Their clothes were clean, their voices clear. Lyra watched them from behind the energy fence, her heart beating fast with curiosity. Among them was Captain Elias Ward, a tall man with short brown hair and steady gray eyes. He wasn't young, but not old either. His face showed experience, someone who had seen both peace and war. He walked beside the Zirath commander, Vokran, who was explaining the state of the mines. "This area is secure," Vokran said proudly. "Our labor force works day and night. Efficiency has improved by 17%. Elias looked around, frowning. His gaze fell on the chained Varn workers, their tired eyes, their trembling hands. When he saw a small girl, Lyra, struggling to lift her container, something in his chest tightened. He stopped walking. "Are these workers?" he asked carefully. Vokran laughed, showing his sharp teeth. "Slaves, Captain. The Varn are not civilized. They obey simple orders. We use them for tasks machines cannot handle." Elias's jaw tightened. "You keep living beings in chains?" "They are not like you or me," Vokran said coldly. "They understand only force." Elias said nothing more. But his eyes followed Lyra as she stumbled again. The guard behind her raised his control stick, ready to shock her. Before he could press the button, Elias stepped forward quickly. "Stop," he said sharply. The guard froze. Vokran turned toward Elias, annoyed. "What are you doing, human?" "She's just tired," Elias said calmly. "If you keep punishing them, your workers will collapse. That helps no one." Vokran narrowed his eyes but waved his hand. "Fine, give her a moment. But do not interfere again." The guard lowered his stick and Lyra fell to her knees, panting. Elias knelt beside her, ignoring the dust. He took a small water flask from his belt and held it out to her. "Here," he said softly. Lyra stared at him in shock. She had never seen a human up close. His eyes were kind but serious. She didn't understand his words, but she understood the gesture. Slowly, she reached out, trembling, and took the flask. The cool water touched her lips, and she almost cried. It was the cleanest thing she had ever tasted. When she tried to return the flask, Elias shook his head. "Keep it." Then he stood up and followed Vokran, who was already walking away impatiently. For the rest of that day, Lyra couldn't stop thinking about the human. She didn't know his name, but she remembered his eyes. No one had ever looked at her that way. Not with pity, but with respect. That night, after the shift ended, the Varn workers were locked inside their cages. Lyra sat quietly, holding the empty flask close to her chest. The other workers whispered among themselves. "Did the human hurt you?" one asked. Lyra shook her head. "No, he helped me." The others stared at her as if she were dreaming. "Humans don't care about us," another said. "Don't trust him." But Lyra felt something different inside her, a small, fragile light. Maybe not all beings were cruel. Maybe kindness still existed somewhere in the universe. The next day, Elias returned to the site to inspect the machinery. When he passed by the cages, he looked for Lyra. Their eyes met for just a second, and he gave her a tiny nod, a silent promise that he had not forgotten her. Later that evening, he sat in his tent reading the mining data. His assistant, Lieutenant Harper, noticed his distracted look. "You've been quiet since we arrived, sir," Harper said. "Something bothering you?" Elias leaned back and sighed. "Harper, tell me something. Do you think it's right to call ourselves explorers when we ignore suffering right in front of us?" Harper frowned. "You mean the Varn? They're not under our command. Zirath law allows it. If we interfere, it could cause political trouble." "I know," Elias said, "but laws don't make something right." Outside, a storm began to roll over the barren plains. The wind howled through the metal towers and lightning flashed in the distance. Inside her cage, Lyra sat awake, listening to the thunder. Each rumble sounded like the voice of something ancient and powerful, maybe freedom itself. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed outside the cage. She froze, clutching her chain. The lights flickered, and then a familiar figure appeared. The human. Elias looked around carefully to make sure no guards were near. He held a small packet of food in his hand. Through the energy bars, he passed it to Lyra. "Eat," he whispered. "You need strength." Lyra hesitated, then took the food. She didn't understand his words, but she understood his heart. She whispered softly, "Thank you." Elias smiled, realizing she was trying to speak his language. He pointed to himself and said, "Elias?" She blinked, repeating softly, "E." As he nodded, then pointed at her. "Name?" "Lyra," she said quietly. Elias smiled again. "Lyra," he repeated. A strong name. Before he could say more, voices echoed down the corridor. Elias quickly moved away, vanishing into the shadows before the guards could see him. Lyra hid the food under her blanket and lay down, pretending to sleep as the guards passed by. Her heart raced, but it wasn't fear. It was hope. That night she dreamed for the first time in her life. She dreamed of a world without chains, where the air smelled of rain instead of metal, and where the stars weren't just things to look at. They were places she could go. In her dream, a voice whispered her name, Elias's voice, saying, "You deserve to be free." When she woke up, tears ran down her cheeks, but her heart felt stronger. For the first time, Lyra believed that maybe her life could change. Maybe kindness could break even the strongest chains. And far away, in his tent, Elias sat staring at the stars, thinking about the girl in the cage. He knew he couldn't look away anymore. He had seen something in her eyes, something unbreakable, something human. The next morning, the mines were filled with noise again. The machines roared, and the sound of heavy metal echoed through the tunnels. The guards shouted orders, and the Varn workers obeyed silently. Among them was Lyra, her thin hands trembling as she lifted a heavy box. But something inside her had changed. She was not the same frightened girl who had accepted her chains as her fate. There was now a small light of courage burning in her heart, a light born from one man's kindness. That man was Captain Elias Ward. Elias walked through the base with a calm expression, but his mind was storming. He could not forget the sight of Lyra's bruised wrists and frightened eyes. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face, not as a creature or a slave, but as a person who deserved dignity. Still, he had to move carefully. The Zirath were watching him. Their commander, Vokran, was a proud and suspicious leader. He didn't trust humans easily, especially those who asked too many questions. That afternoon, Elias was called to Vokran's office. The tall alien stood behind a desk made of black crystal, his red armor reflecting the light. "Captain," Vokran said slowly, "I have received reports that you are visiting the slave quarters after dark. Is this true?" Elias kept his tone steady. "I was checking the security lines. I wanted to make sure the energy fences were stable. If they fail, your entire operation could be in danger." Vokran studied him for a moment, then gave a cold smile. "Good. Keep your eyes on the systems, not on the slaves. They are not your concern." Elias nodded politely and left the room, but as soon as he stepped outside, his jaw tightened. He hated how easily the word slave came out of Vokran's mouth. That night, he went to the storage area to check the equipment logs. But instead of walking toward the machines, he quietly slipped into a side tunnel that led to the cages. The guards were gone. Most were resting in the barracks after a long day. Lyra was sitting quietly, cleaning her small bowl of water when she heard the faint sound of boots. Her heart skipped a beat. When she looked up, she saw Elias again. Her eyes brightened like twin stars in the dark. Elias crouched near the energy bars. "Lyra," he whispered softly. She stood up quickly and came closer. Her voice was quiet but filled with wonder. "You come again?" Elias smiled. "Yes, I had to see if you're all right." She nodded slowly, her chain clinking. "I am fine." He looked at the metal cuffs on her wrists. "Does it hurt?" She looked down, hesitating. "Sometimes," Elias frowned. "They shouldn't treat you like this. You can think, you can speak. You are not an animal." Lyra tilted her head, trying to understand his words. She only caught some of them, but she felt the meaning behind them. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small round device, a translator chip. "This will help us talk," he said, placing it near the fence. The chip projected a soft light, scanning Lyra's voice as she spoke. After a few seconds, it began to translate her words. Lyra gasped when she heard her own voice in the human language. "You understand me?" she said in surprise. Elias smiled warmly. "Yes, now I can." Her eyes filled with tears. "No one ever wanted to understand me before." Elias felt a lump in his throat. They should have. "You deserve to be heard." They talked quietly for a long time. Lyra told him small things. About the mines, about how the Zerath took her people from their villages, how they destroyed her home. She didn't complain or cry. She just spoke with quiet sadness, as if she had accepted that pain was normal. But Elias couldn't accept it. When she finished, he said softly, "You are brave, Lyra. You have survived things most humans could not. You are stronger than you think." Lyra looked at him with wide eyes. "Strong?" she repeated. "I am weak. I cannot fight, I cannot run." "You don't need to fight to be strong," Elias said. "You only need to keep hope alive." Her lips trembled. "Hope is dangerous. Hope gets you hurt." Elias shook his head. "Hope is what keeps us alive." Just then they heard footsteps echoing from the hallway. Elias quickly switched off the translator and moved back into the shadows. A Zerath guard appeared, walking lazily past the cages. Lyra stayed silent, her heart pounding, until he was gone. When Elias stepped back into the light, he said quietly, "It's not safe here. I'll come back. I promise." "Why?" she asked softly. "Why help me?" "I am nothing." He looked at her with calm eyes. "You're not nothing. You're someone who deserves to live free." Then he was gone, leaving her with those words echoing in her mind. Over the next few days, Elias began to uncover more of the truth. He accessed the Zerath computer systems under the excuse of studying their machinery. What he found shocked him. Old files, reports, and images that told a hidden story. The Varn were once an advanced civilization. They had their own cities, art, and starships. But the Zerath invaded their planet long ago, destroyed their technology, and forced the survivors into slavery. Elias's hands shook as he read the reports. "They wiped out an entire culture," he whispered. "All for minerals and power." He knew he couldn't just walk away anymore. That night he returned to Lyra's cage again. The translator glowed softly as they spoke. "Lyra," he said, "I know what happened to your people." Her eyes widened. "You know?" He nodded. "The Zerath destroyed your world. They took everything from you. But they didn't destroy your spirit. That means there's still hope." Lyra looked down at her chained hands. "Hope will not open these," she said quietly. Elias reached into his jacket and pulled out a small tool, a code key used for unlocking security systems. He placed it against the energy fence, and for a moment the blue light flickered. The chain on her wrist made a soft click, but he didn't remove it yet. "I could free you right now," he said carefully. "But if I do it the wrong way, the alarm will go off and they'll kill you. I need time to plan." She looked at him with fear and disbelief. "You would do this for me?" "For you," he said simply, "and for what's right." For a long moment they just looked at each other. No words were needed. Lyra saw in his eyes something she had never seen before. Truth. Before he left, he handed her a small metal coin with the Earth Federation symbol on it. "Keep this," he said. "If anyone tries to hurt you, show them this. It means you have a friend among the stars." When he was gone, Lyra held the coin tightly in her hand. The cold metal felt strange but comforting. For the first time in her life, she allowed herself to smile. Days passed. Elias worked secretly, studying the base layout and the guard schedules. He noticed that during the night cycle, the security system was weaker near the east hangar. That would be the best chance for escape. But things grew dangerous when a Zerath technician reported strange activity in the data logs. Vokran grew suspicious again. He called Elias for questioning. "You humans," Vokran hissed, "you pretend to be noble, but I see curiosity in your eyes. You want to judge us." Elias replied calmly, "I'm here to fix your systems, Commander. Nothing more." Vokran leaned closer. "Good, keep it that way. Remember, this is our world, not yours." Elias nodded, but inside his heart he made a silent promise. Not for long. That night, Lyra dreamed again. In her dream, she was standing under a blue sky, something she had never seen before, and beside her was Elias, holding out his hand. When she woke up, her heart was filled with determination. She whispered to herself, "I will be free. I will trust him." And far away Elias stood looking at the stars through the glass dome of his tent. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with quiet fire. He knew what he had to do. He would break the rules, risk his life, and defy the Zereth, because sometimes doing the right thing meant breaking every chain, even if the chain was made of law. And somewhere deep in the mines, a chained girl waited for him, her hope growing stronger with every passing night. The path to freedom had begun. The cold winds of Varlian 9 swept through the mining valley, carrying the smell of dust and smoke. The sky was dark again, filled with gray clouds that never rained. Inside the mining base, everything was silent except for the hum of the generators and the echo of distant machines. But under that silence, something dangerous was building, a plan. Captain Elias Ward sat alone in his small tent, his eyes fixed on a glowing map projected over the table. The layout of the mining base shown in red lines, fences, guard posts, patrol paths, and tunnels. He had spent nights studying every detail. He whispered to himself, "We can make it through the east tunnel during the night shift, if we move fast enough." His assistant, Lieutenant Harper, entered the tent quietly. "Sir, you've been awake for 2 nights. You need rest," Elias shook his head. "No time, Harper, listen. If something happens to me, tell Earth Command the truth about what's happening here. The Varn are not slaves. They are people." Harper frowned. "You're not seriously planning to—" "I am," Elias interrupted softly. "There's a girl down there, Lyra. She deserves freedom." "They all do," Harper sighed. He had known Elias for years and recognized that tone. Once Elias made a decision, no one could stop him. "Then may luck be with you, sir," Harper said quietly. Elias nodded and began to pack his gear. A small energy pistol, a data chip with the map, and a key card for the hangar bay. He checked the time. The guards would change shifts soon. That would be his moment. Down below in the darkness of the mines, Lyra sat in her cage, her heart racing. She held the small earth coin in her hands, its metal warm from her touch. She had been waiting for this night, though she didn't know exactly when it would come. The translator chip beside her flickered softly, and then she heard Elias's voice through a tiny communicator hidden under her blanket. "Lyra, it's time," he said. "Do you trust me?" She took a deep breath and whispered, "Yes." "Good. When the lights go out, stay low and move to the north gate. I'll be there." Her hands trembled, but her voice stayed firm. "I will come." Moments later, the main lights of the mining level flickered and went dark. The guards shouted in confusion as emergency lamps switched on, turning the tunnels red. Smoke filled the air from one of the generators that Elias had sabotaged earlier. Lyra's cage door clicked open with a small electric spark. Elias had overridden the locks remotely. She stepped out, her legs shaking, not from fear but from disbelief. She was free for now. She looked around and saw other Varn staring at her in silence, their chains still attached. Lyra wanted to free them too, but she remembered Elias's words. "If we stay, they'll find us all. If we escape, we can come back for the others." With a heavy heart, she whispered to them, "I will return." Then she ran. Her bare feet hit the cold metal floor as alarms began to echo through the tunnels. Red lights flashed and the voices of guards filled the air. "A prisoner has escaped." "Seal the exits!" Lyra ducked behind crates and pipes, moving quickly through the shadows. Every sound made her flinch. The clank of boots, the hiss of machinery, the growl of alien voices. Then she saw him, Elias, waiting near the north gate, wearing a dark coat and holding a control tablet. When he saw her, relief washed over his face. "You made it," he said. She nodded, panting. "I ran fast," he smiled faintly. "Good. Let's keep running." He led her through the gate into a maintenance tunnel that stretched far beneath the base. It was narrow and dark, filled with cables and pipes, but it led toward the east hangar where a small transport shuttle was parked. As they moved deeper, they heard distant voices echoing behind them. The guards had discovered their trail. "They're coming," Lyra whispered. "I know," Elias said calmly. "Stay close." The tunnel turned into a maze of metal paths and ladders. Lyra followed Elias through each turn, her breath coming fast. She stumbled once, scraping her hand, but Elias turned back instantly, helping her up. "Are you all right?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes, I can go." He gave her a small smile. "You're stronger than you think." They kept moving until they reached a large metal door with a control panel beside it. Elias pressed his keycard, but the system flashed red. Access denied, the screen said. Elias muttered, "They've locked it remotely." He started to hack the panel using his data chip, typing quickly. Sparks flew as he overrode the controls. Lyra watched him with wide eyes. She didn't understand the machines, but she understood the determination on his face. Suddenly, heavy footsteps echoed from behind. The guards were getting closer. Lyra looked around and saw a small vent on the wall. "We can hide," she said, pointing. Elias shook his head. "No time. We need to move." The door beeped and slid open just as the guards turned the corner. "Go," Elias shouted. They ran through the door and Elias slammed the control panel, sealing it behind them. Laser fire hit the door a second later, burning holes into the metal. They were now inside the east hangar. The wide room was filled with ships, crates, and lights. At the far end, Elias's small shuttle waited, gray, scratched, but ready. Lyra stared in awe. "This flies?" Elias smiled. "It will if we're lucky." They sprinted across the hangar, but more alarms started to ring. Above them, Vokran's voice roared through the speakers. "Human traitor, you have broken our law. You cannot escape." Elias ignored the voice. "Faster, Lyra." She ran beside him, her legs aching but her heart full of fire. She could see the stars through the open hangar roof, stars she had only dreamed about. Just as they reached the shuttle, 2 Zerath guards dropped from the upper platform, blocking their way. The tall creatures raised their weapons, aiming at Elias. "Stop," one shouted. Elias pushed Lyra behind him and raised his pistol. "Get back," he warned. A bright flash filled the air as the guards fired. Elias rolled aside, returning fire. One guard fell, the other ducked behind crates. The sound was deafening. Lyra covered her ears, shaking with fear, but when she looked up, Elias was still standing. "Inside the ship," he shouted. She climbed the ramp quickly, her hands trembling as she strapped herself into a seat. Elias jumped in behind her and started the engines. The shuttle shook as the thrusters came alive. More guards poured into the hangar. Vokran himself appeared, his red armor glowing under the lights. "Elias Ward," he shouted. "You will die for this." Elias didn't answer. He pulled the throttle and the shuttle roared upward. The blast of air knocked several guards to the ground. As the ship rose, laser bolts shot past them, lighting the sky with red fire. Lyra cried out, gripping the seat. "They are shooting at us," Elias said calmly. "Hold on." The shuttle shot through the hangar doors and into the dark sky of Varlion 9. The storm clouds swirled around them, lightning flashing across the horizon. Behind them, Zerath fighter ships began to launch in pursuit. Elias worked quickly at the controls. "We need to reach orbit before they catch us." Lyra watched him, her heart pounding. The ship rattled, the alarms beeped, and the engines roared. She had never seen the sky from above, only from the ground. Now, as the shuttle rose higher, the gray clouds thinned and a strange blue light appeared. She gasped. "It's beautiful," Elias smiled briefly. "That's the upper atmosphere. Beyond that, the stars." But their moment of peace didn't last. A Zerath fighter locked onto them, its lasers streaking through space. The shuttle shook violently as energy blasts hit its side. Elias gritted his teeth. "Hang on." He flipped a switch, releasing small counter-drones that exploded behind them, confusing the enemy sensors. The fighter veered off course, but more were coming. Lyra looked at him with fear. "Will we die?" Elias glanced at her, his voice firm. "Not today." He pulled the ship into a steep climb. The engines screamed, the cabin shook, and the stars grew brighter. Then suddenly, silence. They had broken through the atmosphere. Below them, Varlion 9 looked small and gray. Above them, the universe stretched endlessly, a sea of stars and light. Lyra stared out the window, her eyes wide with wonder. She whispered, "We are free." Elias exhaled slowly. "Not yet. But we're close." He looked at the radar. 3 enemy fighters still followed them. But far ahead, a human signal blinked on the screen. The UHS Valor, a Federation ship, was patrolling the outer orbit. Elias smiled faintly. "We just need to reach them." He pushed the engines harder, the stars blurring as they sped forward. Lyra held onto her seat, her heart racing with both fear and hope. For the first time in her life, she wasn't running from pain, she was running toward freedom. And beside her, a human captain risked everything to make it real. The stars stretched endlessly before them, bright and cold. The small shuttle shivered under the strain of its engines as Elias Ward pushed it faster. weaving through meteor debris and thick clouds of planetary storms. Behind them, the roar of Zerath fighter ships grew louder as the enemy pursued relentlessly. Inside the cabin, Lyra held tightly to her seat, her knuckles white. She had never imagined seeing space in person. The glittering stars, the glowing streaks of distant planets, and the vast darkness filled her with awe and fear. Elias's voice cut through the hum of the engines. "Lyra, keep calm. Don't look down. We need to focus." Her wide eyes met his, and she nodded. I'm scared," she admitted softly. "I know," Elias said calmly. "It's okay to be scared. It's natural. But fear cannot stop us." Lyra felt a strange warmth in her chest. The human beside her, the one who had risked so much for her, was telling her that even in the darkest moments, hope could guide her. The shuttle rocked violently as a laser blast hit the side. Sparks flew across the control panel. Elias gritted his teeth and twisted the throttle. "We can't let them hit the engines. Brace yourself." Lyra's stomach flipped as the shuttle tilted sharply. She grabbed onto the edge of her seat as Elias maneuvered through the enemy fire. The ship darted past asteroids, narrowly avoiding collisions, and she gasped at every movement. Why are they chasing us?" she asked, her voice trembling. "They think I've stolen something from them," Elias explained. "But I didn't steal anything. I'm just helping someone who deserves freedom." Lyra swallowed hard. "Me?" "Yes. You." He glanced at her briefly, his gray eyes softening. "You're not a prisoner. You're a person. You deserve to live without fear." Her eyes shimmered with tears, but she did not look away. For the first time in her life, someone truly believed in her. Outside the shuttle, the sky erupted with explosions as more Zerath fighters tried to block their path. Elias worked quickly, pulling switches and flipping controls. He activated the shuttle's countermeasure system, releasing small decoy drones that emitted light signals to confuse the enemy sensors. "Now, Lyra," he shouted. "Hold tight." The shuttle veered sharply, spinning in a wide arc. One fighter collided with a decoy and exploded in a flash of red and orange. The others fired wildly, trying to adjust. Lyra's heart pounded as she clung to her seat, her hair whipping around her face. Elias's hands were steady on the controls. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp and focused. "We're almost there," he said, more to himself than to her. She looked at him, trying to understand. "Almost where?" "The UHS Valor," he said, pointing at a blinking blue light far ahead. "A human ship. It will protect us." Her breath caught. She had never dreamed she would see other humans in space, let alone that they would come to rescue her. But the journey was far from over. The enemy fighters were still closing in, and the shuttle's engines were beginning to overheat. Sparks flew from the console and smoke began to fill the cabin. Elias gritted his teeth. "We need to go faster." He flipped another switch and the engines roared even louder. The shuttle shook violently. Lyra gritted her teeth and closed her eyes, gripping the seat tightly. Then a sudden jolt threw her against the back of the seat. The shuttle spun and alarms blared. "We're losing control," Lyra cried. Elias's voice was calm but commanding. "Focus on me, Lyra. Follow my instructions exactly." He pressed buttons and flipped levers, his movements precise and fast. Slowly, the shuttle began to stabilize. After several tense moments, the engines roared steadily and the shuttle leveled out. Lyra exhaled, her body trembling from fear and relief. Elias looked at her, smiling faintly. "See? You survived." She nodded, her eyes shining. I can't believe it. We might make it." Far above, the UHS Valor, a large human battleship, had detected the shuttle's distress signal. Captain Monroe, an old friend of Elias, commanded the ship from the bridge. "Elias Ward, is that you?" Monroe's voice crackled through the communicator. "Yes," Elias replied, voice steady. "We are being chased by Zerath fighters. Request immediate support." "Hold on, Ward," Monroe said. "We're coming to intercept." The shuttle's radar picked up the Valor approaching. Lyra pressed her forehead against the glass, staring at the massive ship for the first time. Its hull glimmered under the starlight, sleek and powerful. She felt a wave of hope wash over her. Elias guided the shuttle closer. "Once we're under their protection, the fighters won't risk attacking us." But the Zerath were not willing to give up easily. Their fighters closed in, firing laser beams that streaked past the shuttle. Elias dodged and weaved, narrowly avoiding collisions. Lyra's hands were sweaty and her chest heaved from the tension. "Almost there," Elias shouted. The Valor's energy shields flared brightly, creating a wall of protection around them. The first fighter tried to attack, but its weapons were blocked by the shields. Another fighter collided with a decoy drone exploding in fire. One by one, the rest turned back, unwilling to fight against the massive human ship. Lyra gasped and hugged her knees. We made it!" Elias exhaled slowly, looking at the blinking blue lights of the Valor. "Not yet. We still need to land safely." The shuttle's engines began to overheat again as they approached the docking bay. Sparks flew and the cabin shook. Lyra felt fear rising again, but Elias's calm voice guided her through the chaos. "Stay calm, Lyra. Watch my hands. We'll touch down slowly." The shuttle descended carefully, slipping past the Valor's shields and docking with the magnetic clamps. A soft hiss announced that the shuttle had locked into place. Lyra exhaled, her body trembling. She looked at Elias. "We are safe," Elias nodded, finally allowing himself a small smile. "For now. The Zereth can't reach us here." The docking bay doors opened and human crew members rushed to help them. They pulled Lyra from her seat, wrapping her in a warm blanket. For the first time, she felt soft fabric against her skin, something she had never known in the mines. She looked around in awe at the humans moving calmly, communicating with each other and operating the massive ship with efficiency and care. One of the crew, a tall woman named Lieutenant Rhea, knelt beside her. "You're safe now," she said gently. "No one will hurt you here." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. "Safe?" she whispered. She didn't know how to say all she felt, but the feeling of warmth, protection, and freedom filled her completely. Elias stepped beside her, his hand brushing her shoulder. "You are free now, Lyra, no chains, no fear." She looked at him, and for the first time she truly believed it. The chains that had bound her wrists and soul for so long were gone. She could breathe freely. She could dream. The shuttle crew began checking the vessel, repairing minor damage and confirming they were safe from enemy pursuit. Lyra followed Elias to a viewing window where the stars stretched infinitely across the sky. She whispered, "The stars. They are beautiful." Elias smiled softly. "They always were. But sometimes it takes leaving your cage to see them." Lyra's heart swelled with emotion. She thought of the mines, the Zereth, and all she had endured. And yet beside her a human had risked everything to bring her here, to show her kindness, courage, and hope. I will never forget this," she said softly. Elias looked at her, his expression calm but firm. "Remember, Lyra, freedom is not just about leaving chains behind. It's about believing you deserve it. And you do." She nodded, feeling a strength she had never known. "I will be brave." The Valor moved steadily through space, leaving Varlion 9 far behind. Lyra held the Earth coin in her hand, feeling its warmth. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, she felt ready to face it. And beside her, Elias prepared the ship for their journey home, knowing that the universe had just witnessed the courage of a young alien girl and the unwavering kindness of a human heart. Together, they had escaped the darkness, and the stars now shone brightly before them, a promise of hope, freedom, and a new beginning.